Welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast with your host, Helen Fritsch. Helen is a 60-plus lifelong competitive athlete, flight attendant, published fitness model, writer, IFBB bodybuilding pro, and certified wine specialist who believes that your age is irrelevant to pursue goals, dreams, and desires. Are you a woman in her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who still has a burning desire to pursue a dream or a passion? Are you thinking about starting a new chapter in your life, but you're hesitant, thinking that you might be too old or just don't know where to begin? The Age is Irrelevant podcast is a podcast devoted to women who want to defy the odds, smash barriers, and redefine happiness and success after 40. It's time to make a difference. There is no need to dread blowing out that added birthday candle every year. A new movement is slowly taking momentum, where being over the hill just isn't relevant anymore. Age labels are being thrown out the window, and women are rediscovering the strength within themselves to make a difference, not only within their own lives, but also touching and inspiring the lives of other women. Join Helen as she and her guests discuss all aspects of aging after 40 and how to make the aging process and those twilight years more rewarding, exciting, and fun.
Hello and welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast. I'm your host, Helen Fritsch, and this is episode number 81. Now, today's episode is being sponsored by Macros Through Menopause, an online 6 weeks fitness and nutrition program geared specifically towards women who are going through any phase of menopause. There are things that we can do to lessen the severity of menopause, and we do not have to be miserable anymore. You'll get 6 weeks of workouts, 6 weeks of personalized nutrition, a free macro course to teach you how to calculate your own macros, supplement guides, grocery lists, essential oil recommendations, and much, much more. If you're interested, go to my website, www.ageisirrelevant.com, and you can click on the link to get more information. Now today, I am interviewing 40-year-old Felicia Romero. Now, Felicia is a fitness instructor, gym owner, cover model, figure competitor, and a very successful entrepreneur. She's an 8-time fitness cover model, including magazines from Oxygen, Muscle and Fitness Hers, and Flex Magazine. She opened up her first gym at age 22 and over the years has built and run gyms until just about a couple of years ago when she sold her Fit Method to create more time and freedom in her life so she could build her online business helping other people around the nation. She's done stints on reality TV, local TV, and national TV. She is a regular on Fox 10 News, Arizona Family, CBS, and NBC. And she also has a podcast called the Hi Felicia podcast and founder of her own nutrition line, Luna True Nutrition. She is a wealth of information. Not only is she a friend of mine, I met Felicia about 10 years ago, right before I started getting into bodybuilding. And she at the time was a 5-time, I believe, Olympian. And I met her at the Arnold Sports Festival in Columbus, Ohio, and was super stoked to meet her. And we've maintained that friendship throughout the years, and now she's my business coach. So she has a wealth of information and knowledge to share. She's very positive and uplifting, and I can't say enough good things about her. So without further ado, here is my interview with my good friend, Felicia Romero. Hi, Felicia. Welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled that you're here, too. So for my listeners, I am speaking to 40-year-old Felicia Romero. Felicia is a local Arizona gal. She went to Arizona State, where she played softball, and she got her master's degree in exercise and wellness. She's also an 8-time fitness cover model, including Oxygen Magazine, Muscle and Fitness Hers, and Flex Magazine. She's an IFBB pro, gracing the Olympia and Arnold stages several times, placing very well. She opened up her first gym at age 22, and she ran that gym and scaled it and finally sold it a couple of years ago so she could create more freedom in her life to build her online business to help other people around the country. She's had stints on reality TV, local and national TV. She's a regular on Fox 10 News, Arizona Family, CBS, and NBC. She today mentors entrepreneurs, fitness coaches, and helps them build their brands and businesses online through some great programming that she has that we'll talk about. She has her own podcast called the Hi Felicia Podcast, and she's also the founder of her own nutrition line, Luna True Nutrition. This is my friend, my business coach, and my mentor. Welcome, Felicia.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Oh my gosh. And we were like chatting before you hit record. It's so fun because it's just nice reminiscing. We have so many synchronicities in our life over the last, I want to say like the last 10, 15 years, which is so crazy. And so it's been nice catching up. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, Felicia and I met 10 years ago, and I had just started to get interested in bodybuilding. I decided when I was 55 that I wanted to get into the best shape of my life. And I was an athlete at the time and going to the gym, but I really wanted to up my game. And I honestly would see these fitness magazines, and I would see you on fitness magazine covers and go, I want to look like them, but what do I do? What do I do? And so we have a mutual friend who was actually a pilot that I flew with. And he was huge in the bodybuilding scene, especially here in Arizona. And he suggested that I come to the Arnold up in Columbus, Ohio, and go to the expo and just get my feel for the whole bodybuilding scene. And I was so stoked and so excited. And I discovered that you were coming. And here I am, this little bodybuilding wannabe. And then you are this big IFBB pro Olympian. And, you've competed at the Arnold and, so successful in your endeavors. And I was like picking your brain and just so super stoked and so excited. So it's funny how I met you through him living in North Carolina, and now I live here in Scottsdale, and now we work together. You're my business coach.
Yeah.
So, super. It's funny how we were talking about how things come full circle. So,
oh, for sure. Full circle, especially when so this tells me, because I'm all about like law of attraction and, certain people are meant to be in your life. I feel like every person that I've been in contact, good or bad, right? We have bad experiences, we have great experiences, but people that come into your life, and whether they're there, whether they come back around, are meant to be there, right? And perfect example, my high school sweetheart we're engaged, right? And so we were together when I was in high school, and he was my first boyfriend, first everything. We broke up when I went to college, like nothing dramatic. We're just, two kids, and so 17 years later, we reconnect. You can kind of chalk it up to, well, just coincidence, or you can say, hey, like something happened here in the universe. We were meant to come back around. And so, it's just like, I feel like people in your life are there for a reason. And so you can learn from them or, take something from that relationship. And I feel like, you back into my life now. And this time around, we get to work together. You get to launch your business. Also, you've accomplished so many amazing things over the last 10 years, which is amazing that you've stayed in it and have been able to just climb and do all the things that you want to do and have success doing it. So I love that.
And I love it too.
Yeah.
But what I really like to do when I start off with these podcasts is I'd like to talk about your childhood, because it's funny how we were just talking too about how I've interviewed some people where they never even started fitness until they were in their 50s or 60s. Others like me, my parents were athletic. So I grew up in an athletic household. So I've always had that athlete, in me. And it just, finally, came out full force in my 50s. But were you athletic as a child, or what kind of influence did you have?
Ooh, yes. It's almost like I had no choice. My mom was an athlete. To give you a little insight, like I come from a family of athletes. My mom had the school record. She ran track. She had the discus record for years. I want to say it's probably broken now. And she ran track at Mesa Community College. She played volleyball. She played softball. She did all the things. And so I think for me, I was sort of destined to play sports because I really, it was just part of our family, part of our genes genetically, my uncles all played. And so my mom got me into Little League when I was a kid. I remember 5 years old playing Little League. And I remember I had a hard time I was very shy. I also had a hard time speaking up for myself. So I remember these little kids like throwing grass at me, and I was just sitting there like not defending myself. And my mom like would go to their parents like, "Hey, your kids are doing this, this, and this." And then fast forward to like elementary school, my mom would do the same thing. If I was being picked on, she's like, "Who is it?" She'd go to their parents' house. She'd knock on the door. "You're a little girl." Like my mom was that mom. And so, yeah, like playing sports. And I remember a pivotal story. I want to share this really quick. So, in junior high and in high school, you have sports or you have, sports that are each season. So you have, the winter sports, the spring sports, the fall sports. And, I was always good in the fall and in the spring, because in the fall I played volleyball, in the spring I played softball, but I never played a winter sport. And I remember my mom's like, "Nope, you have to try out at least for something." And, winter sport, there was basketball, and I want to say like badminton or something. I don't know. And so I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll try it for basketball," even though I didn't love it. And so she had to bribe me to try out. She's like, "Hey, if you try out for the basketball team in 7th grade, I'll buy you boys to men tickets." And so I might be outdating myself. I might be outdating myself right now, because if you're listening and you don't know who Boys to Men is, then you are a little young. But Boys to Men was like my jam. Like I was in junior high school. And so I tried out, but on the last day of tryout, I sprained my ankle, and I didn't make the team. I couldn't even make a layup, although I was really athletic. I just wasn't great at basketball. And my mom still got me the tickets. And I remember hobbling around. At the time, it was called America West Arena. And I remember hobbling around on crutches to see Boys to Men with a sprained ankle. But yeah, so long story short, yeah, I had to play all the sports. And I did. I went to college playing softball, so yeah, lots of experience with, and I do believe that playing sports has shaped me in who I am, from the discipline, right? Like, I feel like it's 100%. So important for kids to get involved in something. And again, it doesn't have to be competitive. I'll give you an example. My stepson hates contact sports. We try to get him in soccer. He hates it. Like anything contact with other kids, I think competition really gives him a ton of anxiety. So we've been able to give him, do other things. Like we signed him up for golf. So he's taking golf lessons. But I just think the act of like going to practice, having a coach, being coached, improving, getting better, losing sometimes, right? Going through loss and not being the best and navigating those feelings. I feel like that's really important attribute and important for us to go through as humans.
I can't even begin to agree with you so much. And my dad and your mom would have been great friends back then, because my dad was the same way, big athlete. He actually qualified for the Olympics in track and field. But he had me out. I would go to practice. I lettered in track, cross country, tennis, and basketball. We were state champions at our high school in track and field and cross country. And so that whole thing of being part of a team and the camaraderie, and then just showing up and being held accountable, and then practicing and, improving and getting better and wanting to get better. And then as far as this bodybuilding goes today, I mean, people are like, "How are you so disciplined? How do you do it?" I'm thinking, it's been 50 years of me, 60 years of me, prepping for this. It's just because, you're so used to all this. And then my dad in track and field, he would say, "Okay, here's your time in the 880," and it was called the 880 back then. Mm-hmm. If you beat it by 1 second, I'll give you $20. Well, back then $20 was a lot of money. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm up for it. So yeah. The regional meet came. I broke the regional record, and because I was going to get $50 for that one. So it was just hilarious. But I agree with you. And then, even on the weekends, my parents would take us out, and we'd be at the park and running and biking and, doing what they're playing tennis and, whatever. So it was just like a natural thing.
It was a natural thing. I totally agree. I have another story when I was in junior high and I was playing volleyball. Now, I'm the kind of athlete, I'm very athletic, I'm very coachable. Like I get better through practice and with time. But I remember I was playing volleyball, 7th grade, and, I wasn't quite in my body yet, like I still just didn't have like the techniques and different things. And I remember in the 7th grade, I made the team, but I was second string, which means for those that are listening right now, like first team is like the best. They are the best players. They usually go in, they're the first string. They're usually the ones starting the game. And second string comes in to like, hey, let's give them a chance, or like, hey, the team is up by a lot of points. Let's put in the second team. So I was second team. And I remember my mom at the end of, and again, my mom's part of a lot of these stories because she's been such a pivotal part of my life, of like inspiration and hard work and perseverance. But she's like, hey, I don't want to see you sit the bench next year, 8th grade. Tell me right now, do you want to be the best on the team in 8th grade? And I'm just sitting there like 7th grade, when you think 7th grader, you're like 12 years old, 13 years old. I'm like, yes, I want to be the best. And she's like, all right, we're going to do it. And so she signed me up for a club team called, at the time it was EVJO, which was East Valley Junior Olympics volleyball, sport club team. And she signed me up. I'd go to practice, 2 or 3 times a week, where I was basically practicing with girls that were a lot better than me. But what happens when you play with people who are better than you? You become better. Yeah. And I got better. And I played, and I came back 8th grade year, and everyone was just like, whoa, what happened to Felicia? Not only did I make the team, but I was first team, and I even got MVP that year. I remember so specifically, it was me and Serena Bolter. I remember Serena was really, really good. We both won MVP. And, again, if I didn't have my mom pushing me, and I'm so grateful for that. I know that I'm very privileged to have, a parent that was like bestly interested in my success. If I didn't have that, like, I wouldn't know what it was like to work hard for something and to get better at something. And even if I didn't, get MVP, and if I wasn't the best on the team, I still knew what it was like to just work hard to get better. Right. And so, and that was sort of my life, like those instances, those key moments of like, hey, do you want this? This is what you have to do in order to achieve it, were basically kind of paved the way for my future, from competing to opening up gyms, to pursuing entrepreneurship at 21, 22, to pivoting to like where I am now, to all of the things that has all played a role in being able to be resilient in your life and pursue a goal and accomplish that goal. It all played a part.
I agree 1,000%. Yeah, everything that you're saying, I'm resonating with too. I ran track at the University of Kentucky, so I totally get all that. And I don't know about you, but once I got out of school, was there a period for you where you felt kind of like lost because you're like, well, where do I show up now? Well,
oh yeah,
who's going to coach me? Where's my team? Where are my people? I mean, I literally went through a phase of like, oh my God, I'm on my own now. I mean, I don't know.
Sure. Helen, this is why I started competing. I started competing because I needed something to work towards. I was so used to working towards something. So when I was done with college, in the last 2 years of college, I didn't play softball because I had took an internship. I was a political science major at the time. So I pivoted. I wanted to be a lawyer, took my LSAT for law school, realizing that's not what I wanted to do. And that's around the time that I got certified, started training people out of my home gym, which was my garage. And then I had my first storefront around 22, which was like senior year in college, or close to, actually, no, it was when I was getting my master's. So I got my master's as well. So yeah, I remember I say this all the time, like I would not want to be 21 years old again. Like 21-year-old Felicia was like, what do I do with my life? What do I do next? Like, oh my gosh, everything that I've ever known in sports has now come to an end. Mm-hmm. Everything that I worked for, like college, like what's next? I was so lost and confused, and I just didn't know. I would not want to be that age again for sure. But which is why I naturally got into competing. And it's like, I saw this sign at Gold's Gym. I used to train at the Gold's Gym in Gilbert and Baseline. And it was like the OG gym for me. And I remember seeing this sign for an NPC show. I didn't even know what that was. Like literally the first competition, I remember going on bodybuilding.com, researching how to train for a show. And it's telling me like, oh, I got to eat tuna, and I have to eat boiled chicken and boiled broccoli and like all these things. Like I was like the hardcore dieter back then, because that's all the information that was out there. So I was like boiling everything, no salt, no condiments, like literally like, food that didn't taste good. And there was no like flexible dieting back then. And so I had like, oh, this would be interesting. And everyone would always tell me, Felicia, you would be so great as a competitor. You already sort of naturally have that body type. I was kind of had like a gymnast body, meaning I had like really defined shoulders. And like, I have pictures of me when I was like 10, 11, 12 in the outfield playing softball. And you could literally see my shoulder muscles, when I was 11, 12 years old. So I always had that. And I always had like a butt. And I always, my struggle was always my legs because I always had really skinny legs. But I always had that that physique where I had a little broader shoulder, a smaller waist. And so people would tell me, you would do really well competing. And I'm like, okay. And I remember all the trainers at the gym, like, you need to do this show. And so of course the challenge in me, I love the challenge. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And I remember just being so enamored with just the on stage. I loved the process was fun for me because I do love the day in, day out. I'm fine with discipline. I'm fine with like eating the same thing every day. That doesn't bother me, but I really loved the on stage, like being on stage and everyone's clapping and you're in this like suit. And back then when I competed, there was a 1-piece and a 2-piece. So I had to come out in both. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I have a funny story though. I remember my first competition, had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know how to pose. And so like it was 2004 did my first show here in Arizona. It was a July show. Yeah, the July show was a big show here in Arizona. And I remember I was an intern. Also, I was in college. I had no money. And so I went to a local designer here. Her name was Norma. It's Bilbo Bags. She owns Bilbo Bags. And so I went to her and I said, hey, I can't afford the fancy suits because they were like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I'm like, but can you just make me the suit and I can pay the bare minimum? And then can you just like show me what glue to get and how to pin on my own like stone? She's like, yeah, no problem. She was so nice about it. So she made me the bare minimum suit. And I went out and I got like all the stones and I bought the glue and did all the things. And so I put my own stones on my suit.
Wow.
But I must have like not did it right or maybe not let it set or maybe got the wrong glue. I don't know. But I remember being on stage posing and like the little gems were like popping off onto the stage. And I was like, oh my gosh, they were like falling off my suit. And so yeah, that was my first show. And my first show, I believe I got second or third place and had no idea what I was doing. Like, I didn't even really know how to pose. I was asking the girl in front of me before going out, like, hey, like, what do we do out there? Like, what's this quarter turn? And I learned really fast. Because I did get, my fourth show ever, which my first pro show is when I got my pro card in Vegas. And again, all about timing, perfect timing. It was like, all the stars aligned on that day. But yeah, that was my first story, my first like time competing. And I was like, my suit was falling apart on stage.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. That's really, really funny. I didn't tell anybody that I was competing in a show. And I just kind of took this, I went and entered this 35 plus category bikini show in Charlotte. And here I was 56. And I, because that's all they had was just a 35 plus. And I came in third and I was just like, oh my God. And kind of like you, I prepped for a month, just a month. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to pose either. I was like a deer in the headlights walking out there in these 5-inch heels, and you're like, oh my God. But I loved it. And then, you see this transformation of your body in just a matter of weeks. I couldn't believe how much my body changed in just a month. And I was like, okay, yeah. I'm hooked. So, but that's super fun. So what made you transition once you get out of school? Why did you want to buy a gym? What kind of took you down that road?
You know what? I don't even know why I pursued entrepreneurship. Because if I'm being completely honest, no one in my family had a business, like I didn't have anyone to sort of compare to. I knew myself. I knew that I didn't want to work for anyone. That's one thing that I did know. Like, I didn't want to like clock in, clock out. I didn't like being somewhere at a certain time. I didn't really enjoy being told what to do. And honestly, I got the first taste of it, of doing it out of my home. So I, started getting clients and clients would come over and I started training people out of my garage. And I think that was kind of the first like, oh, I'm making money like being home, like, I think that was like my first taste of it. And then I feel like everything was just sort of, I feel like when you do take action in any sort of direction, it creates momentum, which then creates opportunity. And so what happened is, like, taking action in that certain way, it's like, oh, it created momentum to, like, oh, this storefront just opened up and we happened to train the owners of that 1,500 square foot. This is my first gym, square foot studio. He's like, hey, I'll rent it for you for $1 a square foot. Just train me and my wife for free. Cool. And like, that just kind of led the way. And so having that taste of like owning a gym and putting money into a gym and making your own schedule, I knew after doing that I was never going to be able to work for anyone, because I had so much freedom and flexibility that I crave that. And so naturally, yeah, it just kind of, and the thing is, Helen, like, I built these businesses back in the day when there was no social media.
None.
Like, couldn't promote online. Like, I couldn't, no one knew what I was doing. There was no like Facebook, no Instagram. Like, it was literally just the desire to do something for me and knowing that I could do it. I remember, I think honestly, my naivete got me through my 20s, because I was so naive to the risks. I didn't even think about risk. I just thought about my big vision. Oh, this would be so cool. Like, this would be awesome. And I just found a way. Like, thinking back, I'm like, gosh, I didn't get stuck in the how. I didn't get stuck in like, how am I going to make this happen? I did it. But I also feel like it was my divine path, because the stars would align. And I said this earlier, it's like things would happen. I would meet the right person that introduced me to this person that had this space, or I would meet this person. Like, I know with Fit Method, I met this person who knew a person who was an investor, an angel investor that chose to invest in my business. Like, everything was just always aligned, but it came from action, right? So action then creates opportunities. So I didn't like set out to do it. It wasn't like because remember, I was studying law. I wanted to be a lawyer. It was all these natural progressions of just following my heart, which led to other opportunities. And I feel like this is where a lot of us get stuck, because if I were to think logically, Felicia would go to law school. She would get a law degree. She would go on to be a lawyer. She'd be working for a law firm. That's the logical plan, right? It was all sort of planned out for me. The illogical plan is following my heart and doing the thing that I love and not really knowing the outcome, not knowing what was going to come years later, not knowing that I was going to open up 3 gyms over the course of 12 years. Like, I didn't have that plan. It turned out that way because I just kept following my heart to the next step. And that sort of just again, grew through time. So yeah, I didn't have any entrepreneurs in my family to like have an example with. I didn't have social media. I wasn't seeing what other people were doing. It was just something I think for me that was on my journey that I needed to do for me.
And I think that's why it's so important too. Kind of the same story with me. I mean, I started doing these bodybuilding shows, and finally 4 years later, on my 60th birthday, I won Masters Nationals and I turned pro. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, all these women started reaching out to me on social media and saying, "How did you do that? How did you do that?" And my response was, "Well, age is irrelevant, and you can do whatever you want at any time, at any phase of your life. I mean, you don't have to be a specific age." And then all of a sudden I was like, well, maybe I needed to spread this word, and so then that's when Age is Irrelevant became relevant for me. And I started my, Age is Irrelevant podcast. And so I really think that being passionate about something that you love, if you continue to pursue that, it just kind of naturally leads you, especially if you're open and receptive to the universe. I am so big about that. I know so many people who have their blinders on and they're in this one lane and they refuse to look to the left or to the right. And I'm always looking for signs from the universe, always.
I love that. Do you think, and this is my question to you, because you travel quite a bit, so you're able to see what else is out there in the world? Because a lot of people who have the blinders on, who have that just like very like one lane, like one, I'm going to just do this. And they're not open to the idea of what's possible for them in their life. Right. I do feel like travel is really helpful for that. And you've seen a lot of places, like you've been to a lot of places doing what you do and seeing how other people live and sort of pulling you out of this little box of this bubble of where you are that allows you to just open up the possibilities of what this life is. Do you think that that's helped you?
No, absolutely. I mean, growing up, my dad worked for Texas Instruments, and we would move every 2 to 3 years. And I grew up in Germany, Mexico City. I lived in Canada. And so I think being a flight attendant for me is so good because we were forced to change schools, forced to make new friends. But even when I travel over to Europe now, it's just, your knowledge of the world and of different people and their cultures. And, it's just, I love going to Europe, and I love just walking down the streets and seeing. And, it's so funny. What's really big over in Europe, which I love, is that you see women arm in arm, and they're just walking arm in arm down the street. You don't see that here, but, so many women over there. And it could be two friends. It could be a mom and daughter. But it's just, I get the biggest joy out of that. And then all the people, all the little cafes, and all the chairs are facing out, so everybody can people watch.
I love that. One thing I want to say about Europe that's different than the US, and if you're listening to this and you ever get a chance to like visit another country, especially a European country, I think it's something that can be on your bucket list that you can like set out to do, set a goal to do. I would love for my fiance, I want to take him to Europe next year to just experience it, because he hasn't really been out and doing those things. And that's one thing I attribute my fitness career to, is I got to travel a lot. And I remember being in Italy, and I remember sitting outside having a cappuccino and just like watching. And I even remember like going to dinners, and everyone, like, they're not rushing to get out of the dinner to go do the next thing. Like, literally, dinner is an experience. Like, I remember I'm like, why haven't they brought our checkout yet? Like, people eat dinner and they're there for hours.
They are
enjoying each other's company and talking and drinking wine, and sometimes like ordering more food. And it's like, it's not this thing where you're constantly rushing to the next thing. And I feel like one thing that we may be missing is like the stop to smell the roses, to stop and just enjoy life, and to find things in the smallest of things, and that fulfillment, and that we don't have to rush. We don't have to rush to the life. We don't have to rush to grow up. We don't have to rush to like create a $10,000 a month business. Like, it's always this like next thing, where what I see with Europe, and especially like Italy when I was there, because, I can speak to that because I was there. It's like, there's just this fulfillment in just being, sitting down, sitting down on a bench for hours, people watching, and just enjoying or having a conversation with a friend for hours. Like, that's what I really appreciated, is I feel like things really slowed down there, and there isn't this glamorization of work and hustle and money. It's just like, oh, they just are living their lives and fulfilled in the littlest of things, which I think was really important. And I'm glad that I got to experience that.
Yeah, especially there's so many parks over there too. And, you go to the parks and they're just packed, and lots of families, and just kind of the same thing. Everybody's sitting on a bench and just enjoying the day. But I think as women, especially when we get to be in our 50s, not 40s, but in that 50-ish range, all of a sudden now we start to transition, so we're becoming empty nesters. Our bodies, we're going through menopause. We may be changing our relationships and getting divorced, and we may be retiring, whatever. So I think a lot of women just get stuck. I mean, a lot of people in general, but women just get stuck in a rut. And I know personally, a lot of my online clients who have literally every single one of them have completely changed their lives. And they were just stuck in this one lane where they would only eat one meal a day, or, so many women aren't really well versed on, they couldn't understand why they're not losing weight because they're not eating anything. And so they don't understand why they're not losing anything. And then all of a sudden, when you start feeding them and then you start, giving them consistent workouts, all of a sudden the weight starts coming off. But you have to be open and receptive to new experiences, and not be afraid to step outside of the lane. And I think a lot of women, when you're so used to going down the same path and kind of like this Groundhog Day, every single day, you're just doing the same thing over and over. All of a sudden, when you start like stepping outside of the box and taking that chance and taking that leap of faith, and, I'm all about, like-minded communities. And if you have a passion, it doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, not necessarily even if you're not into sports. I mean, you could be in a book club, you could be in a crafts, group, or, whatever, whatever you're happy with, but you're going to make new friends. You're going to enable yourself to experience, more joy that way, doing things that fulfill you and make you happy.
Yeah, I love that. And that's why it's like, don't be afraid to go out and do the thing. And so like, I know this year I wanted to take piano lessons. I wanted to learn the piano. So I did it. I sought a piano teacher, and I've been taking lessons since January. And I can like now play like songs, slowly, not great, but you can tell what the song is at least. And I wanted to get certified in this new thing called Goddess Yoga. No plans on teaching it. I don't have any I don't really want to go to a studio and teach Goddess Yoga, but I wanted to do it for me. And what I realized is, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I want other women to experience this. So guess what? I get to have workshops here at my house with Goddess Yoga, or I get to host them at retreats if I choose to. And so that was, not being afraid to like try new things, because you don't know where it's going to lead you. You don't know. Like, I believe that every step you take in any direction is going to lead you to whatever it is that you're meant to do. And you're not going to know that if you're just stuck in a rut doing the same things, or keep telling yourself, oh man, I wish I could do that. I know so many women, Helen, that are sitting on the sidelines wishing that they could do the thing. Maybe, and now social media, unfortunately, we get this glamorization of life, and we're on this comparison mode. But so many women living on the sideline, people living on the sideline, thinking, oh man, I wish I could do that, or that would be so cool. But they don't think it's possible for them. And so, it's like, let's switch that. Actually, it is. The first step is to believe that it can be possible for you. And then number two, take the steps necessary to figure it out. And so if you're stuck right now in life, and, I think we come to the end of the year, and a lot of these people start having these thoughts of like, oh, thinking about their year. Oh man, I let so much time pass. I wish I started my wellness journey in January, because I would be 11 months in on my wellness journey. I would maybe be like, what about if I lost 10 pounds a month? That would be, what is it? 10 times not good with math. That'd be almost 100 pounds, right? They would be so further along. But people, again, they get stuck in the same routine and nothing changes. The way that you change is you in order to change physically, or to change your outer circumstances, you have to be willing to change your inner thoughts and circumstances. And right now we have over 65,000, 70,000 thoughts that run through our brain each and every day. And most of those thoughts, for most people, it'll be this reoccurring loop of negative thoughts, of like what's not possible, of what's holding them back, of self-sabotage. And, obviously you and I have been wellness coaches. And for most people, unfortunately, if they're on this yo-yo dieting circuit, chances of them losing the weight, but also gaining it back, are highly likely. And so the change isn't going to be the next diet or the next workout plan. It really must come from your internal habits and the way that you speak to yourself. And that will then lead to the outer changes. But yeah, we get to this place right now in our life, especially the end of the year, where we're questioning all of these things. Oh man, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. Well, you can start now. You don't have to wait till January. And the way that you become unstuck, if you're feeling stuck right now, because if you are feeling stuck right now in your life and you're just kind of like, oh, like you feel stagnant, you're choosing to be stuck, FYI. And I'm sorry, that's a hard truth. And I don't mean to like sound, like I have a ton of compassion for you, but you're choosing to be stuck because you are one coach, one podcast, one book, one resource, one step away from changing your life. But you have to make the choice. You must decide. If you're choosing to be stuck, you're deciding to be stuck. And so, it all comes back down to the decisions that you make and the life that you want to live, because you can change your life with the way that you, with your decisions. So, yeah.
Mindset is key. It's all about this fixed mindset where, once again, they're just in a lane and they've got the blinders on, and there's no alternative recourse. So,
and how many women have you worked with? And I can just speak from experience as well, like who basically say, well, I'm just not a workout person, or I'm not this person, or I'll never have wealth. I'm just kind of, they already have pigeonholed themselves into a certain identity. James Clear says this. If you know James Clear, he has the book Atomic Habits.
I have that book.
Yeah. And so when your identity is tied to a certain thing, for instance, and I'll use a very, very like common example. Oh, I'm just not a person. I'm just going to I'm not in shape, and I'll probably never be in shape. And I'm just not a workout person. Like, if you're already telling yourself that, and that is your identity, your chances of changing are unlikely, because the habits will bring you back down to the person that isn't into wellness, the person that isn't healthy, the person that self-sabotages, the person that is always going to be on this hamster wheel. But if you identify yourself, and I'll use an example, if you want to be a marathon runner, you're not going to run a marathon tomorrow, but you're going to have to start making decisions of a person who runs marathons. And what does that person do? They're probably getting up in the day and they're doing a mile run, or they're walking to the mailbox, or they're moving their body, or they're nourishing themselves so that they can have a good run. You have to start making decisions right now based on where you want to be, right? So if you keep making the decisions based on where you're at now, you're going to be stuck where you're at, because in order to grow, there are going to be parts of you that you have to leave behind. And you're going to have to, like, in order for you to grow and to change your identity, to change into a person who's wealthy, to change into a person who is living in overflow, to change to a person who is healthy and living this optimal, thriving life, you have to make decisions right now that are different than what you've been making. And Joe Dispenza says this. There are parts of you that won't be able to go where you're going. And what that means is, if you want to be this person and you're going to be changing for the better, you're going to have to leave old habits and old things that don't serve you behind. And that's hard for a lot of people, Helen, because we are attached to our identity.
Especially
we are
at our
attached.
age.
It keeps us safe, right? And I'm sure you probably, maybe in the dating pool, dating men who are, older, and they're stuck in their ways, and they're probably, may never change, right? Which is why you have to date people who are willing to adapt and change along with you. But it's like, oh man, if you want to be that person, you have to make decisions from that place, right? If I wanted to create $1 million business, the Felicia that's making the decisions from a person who's making six figures right now, it won't cut it. I'll have to make decisions from a coach or a business owner who is making $1 million. And what does that mean? I have to, invest more in my business. I need to maybe hire an employee and delegate. I have to start making decisions and start showing up and being the person who's $1 million coach. So it all comes back to like who you're being. And so, yeah, if you're stuck right now, if you're listening to this, hopefully this lit a fire under you, because you can change. You just have to make the decision, and you have to decide to be unstuck and take actions moving forward. They can be the smallest of steps, the smallest of baby steps, but as long as you're moving forward, that's all that matters.
Great advice. So you had your gym, and then all of a sudden you decide that you want to sell your gym. Because you want to, I think what we're just talking about, you're thinking about scaling, and, knowing you personally, I know how much joy it brings you to serve others and to help others in their business. Yeah.
I love pivoting. And I know that's really hard for a lot of people, because again, back to identity, and I've been in that boat too. Like, I had the hardest time retiring from competing, because it's what people knew me as. Like, people knew me as Felicia who competed, and I got validated through people who saw me as competing. I got opportunities from people that and part of why I was so afraid to quit is because I was like, what if I'm not relevant anymore? And that's super vulnerable for me to share. That's really hard for me to share. Like, I remember being in a place in my life where I needed all the external validation. I needed the magazine covers in order to feel worthy. I needed for people to be like, oh, Felicia, you look so great. Oh my gosh, you got first place. Like, I needed that in order to feel good enough, right? And it wasn't until I got done competing when I started to do the inner work. And I knew that I had to retire because my body was forcing me to retire. But I had to pivot out of that in order to create more and different opportunities in my life because this was no longer serving me. It's run its course. So back to gyms, and not to say that I would never do that again. I feel like everything is possible and anything is possible. I have a totally like glass half full mentality. And at that time though, it just wasn't serving me anymore. I, had gotten into a relationship, my fiance now. At that time, I felt like I wasn't a great manager and I wasn't a great delegator. So what I did was I burnt myself out. I was doing all the things and I was constantly stressed. So it played its toll on me. So I knew I wanted something different. I wanted more time freedom, more financial freedom. Running a gym with $14,000 overhead a month with like my hard costs and payroll was really stressful. And I wanted to just live stress-free. I wanted to not feel stressed. And so I decided to pivot, right? And that was really hard because I'm a recovering people pleaser. So my biggest thing was, what are people going to think? What if I sell my gym and people think I'm a failure and people think I'm this and that? And it's like, you know what? You get to a point in life, and I'm at that point now, turning 40 this last year, that I could care less what people think. As long as I'm happy and I'm fulfilled and I'm spending the time the way that I want to spend it, that's all that matters. And so this brings me back to pivoting, being okay to pivot, out of the job that you're in that's not making you happy, being okay to pivot your identity from this person who's known to do this thing out of that because it's not serving you anymore. It's like okay to pivot and to change. It's okay to do those things if you want to create more fulfillment in life and that thing is no longer serving you. So yeah, I sold my gyms in 2017 because of what I just explained, to basically, pursue something different and to create more wealth and more time for myself. And and that's what I did.
And you're doing it very successfully, I might add.
Thank you. Thank you. But I'm even feeling the itch again, Helen.
Oh, you are?
This last year. Yeah. Well, it's actually been about a year that I've been thinking about this idea. I won't share it here on the podcast because it's still like coming into fruition. But let's just say that I'm wanting to do, not a gym, but I'm wanting to do, I have a business idea and I would need a building for it, but I'm feeling that itch again to like do something different, but the same, still serving women in entrepreneurship, but pivoting out of the online, still keeping it, but like doing something a little bit different. So, again, when you feel something on your heart and you're like, and again, I've been thinking about this for a year now, and it's been getting stronger and stronger and stronger until these last couple of months, it's kind of like, I'm bursting at the seams. I'm like, I have to do this. So that's when right? And it's your soul. You have to pay attention to your soul.
No, you do. I'm a big gut person and I follow my gut, and it's never steered me wrong, ever. If I keep getting this constant, overwhelming urge to do something, I'm like, I've got to do this.
For sure. And so it may not make sense to anyone else, and that doesn't matter. It has to make sense to you and it has to feel good to you. And that's all that matters.
So I want to talk about also too, your reality show, because I think that for you to specifically go through everything you went through on that show, I think a lot of women would be able to relate.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was okay. So to give people a little context, I was on a reality show called Fit to Fat to Fit. And we filmed it back in 2018. It aired in 2019 on Lifetime. And so to give you a little premise of the show, I was on season 2 of Fit to Fat to Fit. So the premise is I did it along with my sister, and it was an 8-month filming process. And so essentially I had to adopt all of my sister, who is overweight. At that time, she was 100 pounds overweight. And I had to adopt all of her habits, essentially. So she had a desk job, didn't move very much, didn't exercise. She also ate fast food all day. Like most of her meals were fast foods out of a bag, all the things. And so she was just not living an optimal life. She was also 100 pounds overweight. And so the first 4 months of the show, I basically had to intentionally put on weight, like body fat, weight, by adopting all of her habits. So I gained about almost 30 pounds, which was, the gaining weight was hard because you put on, as a woman, you're going to put on the first 10 pounds pretty easily. But as a woman who is very active, who has a lot of muscle, that after that 10 pounds, it was really difficult to keep the weight on. It was really difficult. My body didn't want to hold on to the weight. So I had to become gluttonous essentially for those 4 months, which led to just feeling sick, not feeling good. So it was kind of torture. I'm glad I did it, but looking back, I'm like, I probably would never do that again. But I'm glad I did it for my sister because she lost about 70 pounds in the process. And then I gain weight and then we lose weight together the last 4 months. Although the whole 8 months, she got to partake in the weight loss. So she had this big loss at the end of it. It filmed all of the trials and tribulations of two sisters, of me training her, of the process of me putting on weight and the things that I was eating, all the things. And it aired on Lifetime. And, it was a fun experience for her and I. It definitely created a ton of compassion and empathy on my end because as someone, as you can relate, as someone who has always been active and always been involved in sports and always been relatively quote unquote healthy, it is very difficult for someone who didn't grow up that way, who is dealing with a health or weight related, issues, to just say, oh, I'm going to get up and I'm going to move my body today. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go on the treadmill. And as trainers, we're like, well, just move your body. For people who are really heavy, especially my sister who was 100 pounds overweight, that was really hard for her. Like walking on the treadmill, her thighs hurt, her thighs rubbed together, and it was difficult. It was hard to hold her body up in a plank. Like even the simplest of things were really hard. And also back to identity, she had never really been that person. So she didn't have anything to compare to. She didn't have any history. Like you and I have 20 plus years of muscle memory of workouts day in, day out. We've taken the reps for you a lot longer, and so it was ingrained in us. Whereas for a lot of people who struggle with weight, there is so much more going on, so much more going on. And they say that, I think, forgot the percentage, but, a certain percentage of a lot of people who are now overweight or have weight related issues were maybe, sexually assaulted at a young age or sexually abused at a young age, which then leads to a lot of weight gain as an adult, as kind of the byproduct of that. So there's so much other things going on besides, oh, this person is just lazy and they don't want to eat healthy. And yes, that could be the case, but there's so much more going on. And it's just not that easy to change, right? And so it created a lot of compassion and empathy towards people who struggle.
I see a lot of this on the airplane too, because I'll see parents come on who are overweight and then their kids are overweight too. And sometimes we're victims of our environment. I mean, we don't, if parents are bringing in junk food, fast food, and this is how they're eating throughout the course of the day or the week or the year, their kids don't have any say in, how they eat. I mean, for us growing up, I mean, we ate Spam, we ate, Salisbury steak. I mean, we ate all the fast food stuff, growing up too. The snowballs, little pink coconut snowballs. And the Hostess cupcakes. I mean, Twinkies. I mean, all that stuff, and that's all we knew. And so it is hard, especially when adults really aren't well versed in healthy dietary habits. I mean, a lot of people just don't know what to eat. I find that especially with my coaching, clients that when I'm talking about what kind of complex, carbs you're eating or what lean proteins are you eating, and they're like, I'm not really sure what you're talking about or what you eat.
Look at what's happened. Look at what's happened over the years. Back when we were kids, and if we went to a McDonald's, it was usually because we were getting a treat after a game and we're like, oh, let's go to McDonald's. I grew up in a time when we never talked. I never heard my mom say, I'm getting on a diet. We just didn't have diet talk at my house. But we were also, no one was overweight. No one, because we were active. And also what's changed over the years, and this is I think the first thing that you can do if you are on a weight loss journey, this is the lowest hanging fruit that you can do, is the portion control, right? So look at what's changed over the years from when we were kids and younger to now. That, without a doubt, has dramatically changed from the serving size of food and what people eat in a sitting, right? And so like one meal, fast food meal at one sitting can be almost 2,000 calories. That's probably almost what you should be eating throughout the day, almost throughout the day, right? 2,200 calories. And then imagine now you're snacking, you have your lunch, you have your dinner, you have a snack in between, maybe you have a dessert after dinner. I mean, most people are overeating if you are struggling with any sort of like weight issues. And so like one of the things that I would monitor and sort of examine and take audit of first are your serving sizes. That's the lowest hanging fruit, is for you to cut your portion sizes and really take note of what your portion sizes are. Because I guarantee if you were to actually look at a serving size of what cereal should be and you measure it out and you pour it, you're going to be pretty shocked at what you see. You're going to be like, oh, this is a serving size. I was eating 3 times this at one sitting, right? So that has changed dramatically over the years. I also feel there is this, this interesting thing with diet culture where, you know, back then I didn't know what it was like to binge eat. I didn't know what it was like I never binged when I was a kid. I ate when I was hungry. I stopped when I was full. Then I'd go out and play, right? Like there was never like hiding food or trying to eat more or binging or restricting. And so like so if you think about it, you know, for those that are in part of this like whole yo-yo dieting circuit, the reason you're stuck is because you live in this constant state of restriction and overeating, restriction and overeating. So what then happens? You develop this horrible relationship, not only with food, but with yourself. You also stop trusting yourself and you stop doing all the things that, you know, that you really want to do, but also you just, you know, you're on this like vicious cycle of start, stop, which is going to hurt your metabolism. Right. And so like, yeah, you know, Helen and I are kind of like a rare breed. Like I don't have any, it's like, you know, attachment to food anymore. I used to, I had some major food issues, but I also feel it's because I restricted so much that it's led to this like idolization of sugar. Like, oh, like after my show, I want to eat all the pizza and eat the donuts and eat the thing. Like I never thought that way when I was a kid. Like there was donuts in the house. If I wanted a donut, I'd eat a donut, but I wasn't like obsessing over it. But when I was an adult and I was competing, I obsessed about donuts.
Yeah.
So there is something there with the whole like quote unquote restriction that I feel is really hurting people who want to get healthy. And so instead of looking at things as a restriction or I can't have these things, look at ways that you can add things into your life. Maybe you need to add more protein, prioritize protein. Maybe you want to add a veggie with your dinner. Maybe you want to add more water in your day versus this, and this is going to feel very different versus, well, I started my diet. So that means I got to take away all my carbs. I'm going to just not eat any carbs. And I'm only going to have, this much with my breakfast. And then I'm going to stop all alcohol. And I'm never going to have a glass of wine again. Oh, but I have to take out all my sugar because that's, contributing to all of this weight gain. What happens on day 4 when you're white knuckling it and you're like, oh, I just want, a cookie. So you have a bite of the cookie, which turns into 12 cookies. When actuality, you would have been fine just not demonizing cookies, having one every other day, because that's not going to make or break it. And you can go on with your day. But it's just this cycle and this weird like dichotomy, like mindset towards food and restriction and diet. And it doesn't need to be that way.
Right. Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. And I'm sure, even though you're a business coach now, you're still a wellness coach and you still even have, corporate clients and everything like that too. So you have the full gamut. I want to let everybody know too that you have a podcast. I was joyful enough to be on your show, but talk about your podcast.
Yeah, I love my podcast so much. It's the Hi Felicia podcast. I rebranded a couple years ago. It used to be called The Diet Dropout. So it was very niche in the beginning where I had a lot of fitness people on, wellness, talked about all the things. diet culture and all that stuff. And so I've had this like itch to rebrand because I wanted to expand the conversation to just relationships and home buying and, partnerships, like all the things. So, you can listen on all the major, Spotify, Apple, like any place that you would listen to a podcast. And, that's a lot of fun. I like having, and now I drop 2 episodes a week. Tuesday, I chat with, we call it Tuesday Coffee Chat with my friend Kiana, where we chat about a lot of fun stuff. Like we talk about holiday gift buying, traditions. I think we even had a whole episode on witches and the Salem witch trials and all that fun stuff. So we talk about a lot of like random things. And then usually the second interview of the week is like with some sort of expert. So you can go ahead and listen on all of the places you listen to podcasts.
That's great. And you have your own nutrition line too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Luna True Nutrition. I launched that last year. That's been a lot of fun. Being able to, and so there's an amino acid, a probiotic, and sort of the stress relief product. And it's nice because I do have my corporate clients still with hundreds of people within that corporate realm. So I'm able to, kind of promote to them. And I have this like constant, kind of line of clientele that comes through, and I put them on the amino acids for those that are part of the corporate clients and things like that. So that's been really cool. I've been really enjoying that.
And finally, let's just quickly talk about your, as a business coach, you've been hugely successful in mentoring other, coaches, regardless. I mean, and you have a really great variety of people in your realm now too. I mean, all these different, gals and guys, I mean, not necessarily fitness related, but, coming from all walks of life who want to, scale their business. So talk about your coaching.
Yeah, it is so fun. Naturally, it was just like a natural progression for me because I was getting so many questions on how did I build my online business? Like, what is the things that you did? Like you have, all these corporate clients. How do you do corporate wellness? Like, how do you deliver these programs? And so naturally it was just kind of like, and I love talking to women. I love to mentor women, but also show them what's possible for them. Like that is like something that just is deep inside of me, like deep in my bones. I'm like, let me show you how to create this thing. And so, so basically I help wellness coaches, but I also have helped other coaches that have come in my world, basically learn how to create a product online, usually some sort of digital product or offer or program, and then teach them how to use social media, which is everyone has access now to social media, and to be able to share our gifts to the world in order to get fabulously paid doing what we love. So imagine you share your expertise, you share your zones of genius. There are women or people out there that want what you have or want the solution that you provide. And now you get to put that together in a program and sell it in the online space and, do the same thing in your world. So that is what I help a lot of coaches in the online space do.
That's awesome. So if people want to get a hold of you or follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, I hang out over on Instagram. So I'm on there quite a bit. Super easy to like DM. There's stuff in my link tree if you want to have access to my mini course. I have a mini course there. I have ways that you can work with me, all of those things. And then I have a TikTok, which is a lot of fun. I use that more for fun. I talk a lot about obviously how to build a business, but I think it's just the content creator in me allows me to like kind of like get creative in certain things. So that's what I use my TikTok for. And then FeliciaRomero.com. But I hang out the most on Instagram. So you can check me out there at Felicia Romero. So just my first and last name.
Okay, awesome. Well, it's been awesome talking to you. I think you've provided so much value, and hopefully everyone who's listening to this will have that little fire lit under them to take that first step. Because I think, especially women our age, I mean, I think, I'll get some DMs, and I've actually had some DMs, either people, reaching out to me saying, oh, well, it's easy for you to say that since you're over 60, doing all this when you've been an athlete your whole life. And I said, it is easier for me to do this, but it's not impossible for someone who's just getting started to jump into the fitness arena. And
don't you love when people say that? Oh, I get so, this is a pet peeve of mine. When people say these things or have these assumptions, or they're commenting on your chapter 20, For example, I got a comment from someone that says, well, it's easy for you to like make money. And, because I talked about like living in overflow and like what's possible for people. And you do get some people who are like, well, you're just bragging or you're just doing this. Like, hello, 5 years ago, I had my car repossessed. Like I had like $100 in my bank account. Like if you want something, you have to work for it. Right? It doesn't just come easy. Like you just didn't wake up, being able to get on stage and win an IFBB Pro card or get these opportunities. Like it takes work. But the thing is, you'll trigger people. People will say that. And what happens is the trigger isn't about you at all, Helen. The trigger is, and if we can look at this perspective in a positive light, you're only showing them what they don't have. Right? So you're highlighting the things that they want that they think they can't have because they're not willing to work hard for it or to do the things to get to that level. Right. And so, that's one of my pet peeves is when people comment like, oh, well, it's easy for you, or, oh, like you have these things, or, oh, like, look at you, you're in this house, or you're hello, like I didn't have this 5 years ago or even 4 years ago. Like this is something that I had to work towards. And I come from a very low income family. We were on food stamps for a while. I come from like literally scraping by each month. So no, it hasn't always been easy. But again, if you work for something and you're going towards that goal, it is possible for you, right? So yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, I mean,
it boils.
It's all doable, and I think that's recently I've done some posts about bone health, and I'm getting ready to come out with this 6 weeks macros through menopause course, because so many women are experiencing all the negativity of menopause and not really knowing how they can up their ante. But there's so many things out there. There's such a plethora of things out there that we as women can do to enhance and improve the quality of our life. And it's just a matter of reaching out and finding, and Googling and looking for, answers and asking friends, well, what do you recommend for this? Or how do you recommend for that? I mean, I laugh just because I've learned so much on TikTok. I mean, it's like I'm on TikTok too, but oh my God, all the cleaning stuff. I mean, fitness stuff, remedies for this and that, whatever. And I'm just like, this is awesome. But for me, it's a great platform too, because, I just had a bone DEXA scan, a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to show that how important bone health is, because so many people are dying over the age of 60 from falling, not from the fall, but from the complications of poor bone health, because they're not eating a clean diet, they're not exercising, they're not lifting weights. So, women can start at any age, especially I've interviewed other women on the podcast who never even got into shape or didn't start working out till they were in their 60s. And now they're in their 80s and they're world record holders.
Oh, like this is amazing. It's never too late. And you started the podcast saying, hey, I met you, Felicia, 10 years ago, and I was 55 wanting to do a bodybuilding show. Like it's never too late. It's never too late. And so like, if you're in that mindset and you're limiting yourself, you are holding yourself back from creating all of this fulfillment and amazing things that could happen, all because of that limiting belief. So I love that so much.
Yep. And my whole thing is you don't want to go to your grave saying shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. I so greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, absolutely. Bye.
Bye. I sure hope you enjoyed that interview with Felicia. Such a wealth of knowledge, so positive and uplifting. She's so creative and has such great ideas. If you're interested in catching up with Felicia and talking to her about her coaching programs, you can find her at www.feliciaromero.com. She's also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Felicia Romero. So one thing that really stood out that Felicia mentioned is that so many people sit on the sidelines of life wishing that they could do something. They know what they want, they see what they want, but actually obtaining what they want is just not viable in their minds. Well, why is that? Well, first and foremost, you have to believe, and you have to believe in yourself. Low self-esteem is a huge issue among women, especially as we age. Women tend to feel helpless and lose hope as time ticks by. So how can we stop this downward spiral? Well, we can stop it by working on our mindset. Felicia mentioned that we have 70,000 thoughts a day on average. And yet, how many of those thoughts are negative thoughts? Before we can physically change, we have to internally and mentally change. Developing a positive mindset is really key. It will increase our self-confidence and allow us to believe that anything is possible at any age if we put our minds to it. Positive thoughts bring positive actions. Negative thoughts result in negative actions. And whenever you take action, it promotes momentum, which then creates opportunity. And as long as you move forward, it doesn't really matter how big your steps are. It's all about the positive gain and moving in that right direction. The second chapter of our life should be the best chapter of our life. So take Felicia's advice. Take that action that promotes momentum. That momentum will then create opportunities, and it can become a positive snowball effect before you know it. Surround yourself with like-minded people or community that will embrace you and help you achieve your goals and dreams, and hold you accountable when you're wavering or off track. We all have it in us to be happy and to succeed, but in the end, it all starts within you. I know you can do it. The first step is definitely the hardest, but that first step could be a first step to the best life ever. I sure hope you enjoyed this podcast, so please let me know by sharing a 5-star review on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated. And again, if you're interested in reaching out to Felicia, you can find her and all her coaching info and programming at FeliciaRomero.com. She's also on Facebook again and Instagram and TikTok at Felicia Romero. You can find me at www.ageisirrelevant.com. I'm also on Instagram at HelenFritch_IFBB Helen Fritch on Facebook, and you can reach out to me at helen@ageisirrelevant.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful holiday season, and until next time, don't ever forget, age truly is irrelevant. Bye-bye.